who hasn't got them flowing in their DNA and talking to them and saying, oh, do you remember me at all, or what's going on? What's this whole business? And you've done beautiful in your life and all that, There's still a conversation in the DNA and the syntax of the DNA, I think. Has to.
We mentioned the novel Tipperary.
Yeah.
Several more arts where they went behind traditionally was the site of the original inspiration of the possible inspiration for the song.
Oh, really?
So just to send out men to fight from there.
That must have been the roadworks from here to Temple Moor. Spartan.
The idea that you're giving the accents and the voices to the characters. When you're doing the characters, I always think of just trying to picture the characters. I never think of how they speak.
Yeah. And
when you're writing the book, do you actually imagine them speaking in that accent?
No, and it's completely silent. Yeah. Because what I'm listening and seeing is the kind of whistle tune of people, and that's for me wholly contained in how they're speaking. It's not the sound of their speaking, how it's constructed in a sentence. I was one of those kids who couldn't really read or write till they were 9 or 10, or 8 or 9, and every time I say that I get older for some reason. But anyway, so I think, it wasn't an emergency in those days. People didn't seem to pay much heed to it, but nevertheless it was a fact. But for me, even at the age of 4, language was almost a physical thing. And the way people spoke for me was part of the reason I loved them. And I hoarded what they were saying somehow, instinctively as a child. So I think that's the memory bank that you're calling on. Again, how could you research it? But it's just there. And anyway, the whole process of writing is so strange and so mysterious. I mean, what are you doing? You're essentially sitting down and inserting your face, into some other different time. Your eyes are closed almost as you're working, but you're seeing and hearing, and you're just trying to take it down as best you can with it here, on the thing. And I mean, what the hell that is, I don't know. And I wonder when we were sitting, I was in Cape Town as a child at Gaeltacht, and people would tell you stories by the fire. And there was always something different about the storyteller, wasn't there? It wasn't, for them, while they were telling the story, they were not the person who washed the cups in the scullery or did those other things, because there was something in them. Because their responsibility was to hold your attention and stop you going out into the back lawn and have a pee and look at the stars. You have to be gripped. So there's a sort of fierceness in it. But I don't understand it, and I actually, it's best not understood, isn't it? I suspect you're a writer yourself. I'm talking to you. I'm talking nonsense to you. Why do you write? Well, when I was 17, my passionate desire was to continue on from where Bob Dylan was about to leave off. But sure, poor old Bob, he didn't stop. On he went. He's still touring, so. And I started to write poetry. My first poem published when I was 19, so, be careful, because it's only encouraging people doing that. And I just got a sense that it was something I could do. Yeats says a lovely thing. He says somewhere, he is a fool everywhere except at his desk, which is a lovely thing. And it was the one place where I felt connected not only to my present self, but my 4-year-old self, like all those people who had taken notes of me when it wasn't important to think about things like that, were there. And it was just a sort of full sense of being fully yourself in the moment of working, and yet paradoxically entirely absent as well. Because it is like that moment on the mountains when, in September, when the heat hits the field and the spiders throw themselves across the heather, and in that moment there's no necessity for you to be there. Something beautiful and wonderful is happening, and you just don't need to be there. But the only use in you is your eyes and your ears, and that's really what it feels like for me to write. But I relish that sense of absence. Because I think there's something slightly, now that I think about it, thinking here on my feet, there is something slightly Eastern about that, isn't it? This sort of abstraction of self, so you can actually re-access things that you need.
Not in the prophetic sense of that. You mentioned in the book about the manual, the things that are in crisis, the story goes back to the book.
Yeah.
And one one might say kind of Irish society, so I think, you know, I don't know what's going on, isn't it? But maybe if you see yourself as contributing to this new manual that's been emerging.
I don't know, I tell you the truth. You know, in 2002, when I had a rather incredible experience with a play called Hinterland, and the whole country seemed to be baying for your blood and you were being asked to leave the country at the earliest opportunity. And I was reading the newspapers at that time, and in the reading of those newspapers, I decided I would never believe again anything I read in the newspaper. And indeed wrote in the newspaper, because it just wasn't accurate or true. And we're being asked now, I don't believe in anything governments ask us to think about. That's just, I mean, I admire Ed McKenney. I think he's suddenly turned into a great Taoiseach. And you know, I love Michael D. I'll throw my cloak in the puddle for him any day of the week. That's not what I mean. But I just, you know, as a person with 3 children, as a 56-year-old man, I'm stupid enough to think that I don't believe anything. All these things that Europe is asking us to think about, the brokenness of things and the wreckedness of things and the hopelessness of things, and yet everything that's important to us, I do believe. I don't think the Celtic Tiger removed from us our understanding of what it is. Let's talk about Irish people in Ireland, the things that we love. The things that we love never had any price tags on them. Now I'm also, you know, fully aware of the grief and intolerable strain put on young families with ridiculous mortgages. And if I was a politician, that's the first thing I'd get rid of. Start again, lads. Forget about it. These people can't pay, won't pay, shouldn't pay. Let's do that again, reevaluate the problems. You know, I'm not talking in a totally unpragmatic way, but I do think that the things that are important to us as a people. I mean, when supposedly we had nothing for so many hundreds of years, we invented things as a form of wealth. The wampum, the coloured shells of the Irish imagination, is something you can gather anywhere if you're still enough to see it. I mean, I'm just saying this partly out of hope that is true when I say it. Because I want to be able to go out of my house and look at the snow on Lough Maquillan and suddenly feel happy and throw my kids in the car and bring them to school and be ridiculously made happy by that as well. Because I don't want Europe or any broken-hearted government to be saying that we should be wretched and broken when we are not wretched and broken people. And I am not a political person, but I have read intensely about 1916, and I'm telling you, as we all know, those people were genuinely and hugely brave. I have a problem halfway through the War of Independence when Ernie O'Malley recognises the need to kill those poor policemen wandering up in the mountain on their Sunday walk, if you know it, in one of Mount's Moon. And of course the Civil War was utterly unnecessary and unforgivable. But there was a moment of real sacrifice that made our country. And somebody has given our country away. And we, the people in our generation, in our time, breathing the air on the island of Ireland, just must take it back. You know, you cannot have this place. Give it back to us, even if it's broken. If you put a hole in that bucket, can we have the bucket back, please? You know, because it has old associations to it. That's, what I'm saying means absolutely nothing. It's semi-nonsense, and yet it's what I believe. There you go.
The style of writing to yourself, Sebastian.
What's that?
The style of writing, were you influenced by people when you started reading yourself, or was there any particular writer that you really found?
There's a part of all of our heads, you know, the top bit, that is overeducated, overstuffed. I went to Trinity and read Latin and English, and you know, I read everything I could read. And then part of the business of being writing is forgetting it, or only half remembering it. So that when you're working, sometimes you think, maybe I read that somewhere. I don't care, I'll include it. You know, there should be a proper thief without any remorse when you're doing your own work. And as I've gone on, you know, like singers, you see singers are the same thing. There is the anxiety of influence, and then there's the recognition that the individual signature of the human person is what it's all about. I mean, if we all have an individual imprint, if we all have an individual soul, then that's what you're going to write out of. You know, so that's unique to you. So you need to find your own signature. You might know about music, you might have read about music, you might play the cello, you might have been in an auction, but you need to be working out of your own signature, and that's actually very difficult, because it's the process of taking things away so that you get to the middle thing. And sometimes, half the time in the middle thing, there's absolutely nothing there. You're just like a racketing, empty bicycle shed with the rain lashing on the roof, you know, so that's a bit frightening. But sometimes there is something there, and that's what I would call a book or a play.
What time of day do you